Hello.
On our fifth anniversary, while I slaved away at a conference 2,000 miles from home, my wife celebrated with someone else over champagne at our favorite restaurant. Her text, "Missing you working late." I simply replied, "Miss you too." That night, I made a decision that would shock us both. Instead of confronting her, I disappeared completely. What happened next changed everything. My name is Francis Graves. I'm 34 years old, and 5 years ago I thought I had everything figured out. A beautiful wife, a promising career in sales, and a 5-year plan that would set us up for life. What I didn't plan for was how success could cost me everything that mattered. Lee and I met at a corporate mixer in Chicago. She worked in administration for a competing firm, and the moment I saw her laughing across the room, I knew I had to meet her. With her honey blonde hair and sharp wit, she captivated me immediately. It took 3 attempts just to get her number. She later admitted she made me work for it intentionally. That was Lee, though, always challenging me, always making life more interesting. We dated for 18 months before I proposed. Those were the golden days. Weekend road trips to Lake Michigan, staying up talking until 3 a.m. about everything and nothing, making plans for a future we couldn't wait to build together. When I got down on one knee at the same hotel where we first met, she cried so hard she couldn't speak for a full minute. I still remember how tightly she held me afterward, like she never wanted to let go. Our wedding was small, but perfect. Even through the financial struggles of our early marriage, student loans, credit card debt from Lee's ex, and the down payment on our first home, we remained a team. When the regional sales position opened up, we both saw it as our big break. "Take it," Lee insisted. "The travel doesn't matter. This is what we've been working toward." And I did. The salary jump was substantial, the commission structure even better. Within 2 years, we went from barely making ends meet to finally breathing easy. I was gone 3 weeks out of every month, but we told ourselves it was temporary. Just 3 years of sacrifice for a lifetime of security. My boss Jake once said something that haunts me now. The road to success is paved with missed anniversaries and cold dinners. I laughed then. It seemed like solid wisdom from a man with 3 ex-wives and a corner office. I should have recognized it for what it was, a warning. The first 2 years of our marriage were what I now call our golden years. We had a system for when I was home, making every moment count. Lee would take days off work to match my schedule, and we'd create these perfect bubbles of time together, untouched by the outside world. When my flight would land, she'd be waiting at arrivals with that smile that made everything, the delayed flights, the exhausting client meetings, the endless hotel rooms, worth it. We'd grab lunch at Giovanni's, this little Italian place near our home where the owner knew us by name. Then we'd spend the weekend reconnecting, sometimes not leaving the house for days except to pick up takeout. "I miss you like crazy when you're gone," she'd whisper as we lay together. But it makes these moments so much more intense. I believed her. I believed we were special, that our marriage was strong enough to withstand the distance. And for those first couple of years, maybe it was. My buddy Mark saw the warning signs before I did. We'd known each other since high school, and he had this uncanny ability to read situations. During one of our monthly poker nights, while the other guys were arguing about football, he pulled me aside. "How are things with Lee?" "Really? Good," I said, automatically. "Busy but good." Mark gave me that look, the one that said he wasn't buying it. "When's the last time you were home for more than 4 days straight?" I had to think about it. "February, maybe? For her birthday." "That was 5 months ago, Francis." I brushed him off. Mark had been divorced twice. What did he know about making a marriage work? Besides, Lee and I talked every night when I was away. We had video calls. We texted throughout the day. It wasn't ideal, but it was working. My company promoted me again that year. Senior regional manager. More money, more responsibility, more travel. Lee threw me a surprise party when I got home, inviting all our friends. Her toast brought tears to my eyes. To my husband, who works harder than anyone I know, who sacrifices so we can build the life we've always dreamed about. Later that night, when everyone had left and we were cleaning up, I asked her if the travel was getting to be too much. "Do you want me to look for something else? Something local?" She hesitated, just for a second, before shaking her head. "No, this is your moment." We agreed. A few years of sacrifice for a lifetime of security. I should have caught that hesitation. I should have pushed harder, asked more questions. But I was riding high on success and pride and the absolute certainty that Lee and I were solid. Unbreakable. That winter, I spent just 6 days at home out of 60. Christmas was a rushed affair between client meetings. Our anniversary fell during a major sales conference in San Diego. I sent flowers. I called. I promised to make it up to her. And Lee, she said all the right things. I understand. It's okay. We'll celebrate when you're back. The distance was becoming normal. And that's when the cracks began to show. By our 3rd year of marriage, I was traveling so much that hotel staff in 5 different cities knew my coffee order. The Dallas Marriott kept my favorite whiskey stocked. The Chicago Hilton's concierge would have running routes mapped out before I arrived. My life had become a series of conference rooms, rental cars, and room service meals. Meanwhile, my time at home became increasingly scarce. 2 days here, 3 days there, brief interludes in what felt like someone else's life. Our house started feeling less like home and more like another hotel stop. I'd open drawers in my own bathroom and momentarily forget where things were kept. The promotion to national sales director came with a 40% raise and a corner office at headquarters. When I was actually there, my boss clapped me on the shoulder as he handed me the offer letter. "You earned this, Francis. Your dedication is unmatched." Dedication. That was the word everyone used. What they really meant was sacrifice, but nobody wanted to call it that. Sacrifice didn't look good on quarterly reports. I called Lee immediately after the meeting. "They offer me the directorship," I said, unable to keep the excitement from my voice. Her response wasn't what I expected. A pause, then, "Congratulations. That's great news. You don't sound thrilled." "No, I am. Really. It's just, how much more travel will there be?" "About the same," I lied. "We both knew it would be more." "Right," she said. "Well, we should celebrate when you're back. When will that be again?" "Tuesday. Maybe Wednesday, if the Phoenix meeting runs long." Another pause. "I'll move my plans with Angie to Thursday then." Angie was new. A coworker Lee had mentioned a few times. I made a mental note to ask more about her, then promptly forgot as I was pulled into another meeting. When I finally made it home that week, it was Wednesday night, not Tuesday as promised. Lee wasn't there. A note on the fridge said she'd gone out with friends, back later. I ordered takeout, ate alone, and fell asleep before she returned. The next morning over coffee, I noticed she'd changed her hair. Shorter, with highlights. "When did you do that?" I asked. She touched it self-consciously. 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks. I hadn't even noticed on our video calls. "It looks nice," I offered lamely. "Thanks." The silence between us stretched uncomfortably. "So, tell me about this promotion," she finally said. I launched into details about the new role, the salary increase, the expanded team I'd be managing. As I talked, I realized her eyes weren't lighting up the way they used to when we discussed my career moves. She nodded in all the right places, asked appropriate questions, but something was off. When I finished, she smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm proud of you," she said. Those words should have felt good. Instead, they landed like a formality, something set out of obligation rather than genuine feeling. That weekend, I noticed more changes. Lee's schedule had filled up with activities I knew nothing about. She mentioned a new gym, new friends, classes she was taking. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications. "You've been busy," I commented. She shrugged. "Had to be. Otherwise, I'd just be sitting around waiting for you to come home." There was no accusation in her voice, just a statement of fact. Still, it stung. Sunday night, packing for my next trip, I found myself rushing through our goodbye routine. An early flight meant an early bedtime. Lee watched from the doorway as I zipped my suitcase. "You know," she said quietly, "sometimes I feel like you're just a visitor in your own home." I paused, struck by the accuracy of the observation. But rather than address it, I checked my watch. "I need to get some sleep. Early start tomorrow." She nodded and turned away, leaving me to wonder when exactly we'd stopped really talking to each other. My mother used to say that patterns tell you everything you need to know about a person. The way they organize their sock drawer, how they load the dishwasher, whether they return shopping carts to the corral. Small behaviors that reveal larger truths. The pattern in my marriage had become clear. I would leave for weeks at a time. Lee would develop new interests and friendships, and the gap between us would widen. Each time I returned home, she seemed more distant, more self-sufficient, less like the woman who used to count the days until I came back. March marked my longest trip yet, 17 consecutive days covering 6 cities. When I finally made it home, exhausted and jet-lagged, something fell off the moment I walked in the door. The house smelled different. A cologne I didn't recognize lingered in the entryway. A wine glass sat in the sink, lipstick on the rim. Not unusual for Lee to have friends over, but something in my gut tightened. "Lee," I called out, dropping my bags. She emerged from the bedroom, dressed for work, surprise evident on her face. "Francis, I thought you weren't coming home until tonight. Caught an earlier flight. Wanted to surprise you." I moved to kiss her, but she turned slightly, my lips landing on her cheek instead of her mouth. "I've got a meeting in 30 minutes, she said, grabbing her purse. "There's coffee in the pot. We'll catch up tonight, okay?" Before I could respond, she was out the door, leaving me standing alone in our kitchen, wondering when my homecoming had become an inconvenience rather than a celebration. That afternoon, restless and unable to nap despite my exhaustion, I noticed other changes around the house. New throw pillows on the couch. Different artwork in the hallway. Small things, but they made me feel like a stranger in my own home. I reached for my phone to text Mark, needing to connect with someone familiar, when I noticed Lee had left her tablet on the coffee table. As I moved it to make room for my feet, the screen lit up, revealing a text notification. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." The sender's name was just A, with a fire emoji next to it. My chest tightened. This could be innocent, I told myself. Maybe a girlfriend talking about a concert they'd attended. Maybe a coworker discussing a successful project. The possibilities ran through my mind, each more desperate than the last. I shouldn't have looked. I knew I shouldn't, but I did. I tapped the notification, and the message thread opened. Most of it was mundane, lunch plans, complaints about work, jokes I didn't understand. But as I scrolled up, the tone changed. Became more intimate, more personal. "Miss your hands on me. Can't stop thinking about you. When can you get away from him again?" Him. Me. I was him now. Not Francis. Not her husband. Just an obstacle to be navigated around. I put the tablet down, feeling sick. The evidence was clear, but my mind refused to accept it. There had to be an explanation. Some context I was missing. Lee wouldn't. She couldn't. The front door opened, startling me. Lee walked in, stopping short when she saw me on the couch. "You're still up," she said, surprise in her voice. "I thought you'd be passed out by now." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd married, who I'd built my life around, who I thought I knew better than anyone. In that moment, she felt like a stranger. "Who's A?" I asked quietly. Her face changed, shuddering closed like blinds against the sun. "What?" "On your tablet." "Who's A?" Color drained from her face. "You went through my messages." I didn't have to go through anything. The notification popped up when I moved her tablet. She snatched the device from the coffee table, clutching it to her chest like a shield. "It's not what you think." "What exactly do I think, Lee?" "Francis, She faltered, then straightened her shoulders. "It's Angie. From work. We become close friends. That's all. Friends don't usually miss having their hands on each other." Her eyes hardened. "What do you want me to say? That I've been lonely? That I've spent the last year basically living as a single person while you build your precious career? What did you expect would happen?" The bluntness of her response knocked the wind out of me. Not denial, not even guilt, just justification. "I expected loyalty," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. "I expected the vows we took to mean something." Lee laughed, a hollow sound that didn't suit her. "Loyalty goes both ways, Francis. You chose your career over me 1,000 times. Don't act shocked that I finally made a choice of my own." After discovering the messages, I did what any reasonable man would do. I buried myself in work. 12-hour days became 14. I volunteered for every out-of-town assignment that came up. Running away? Maybe. But it seemed less painful than staying home and watching my marriage disintegrate in real time. Lee didn't bring up our confrontation again, and neither did I. We existed in a cold war of fake smiles and surface-level conversations. "How was your day?" "Fine, yours?" "Fine." The dialogue of strangers sharing living space. I told myself I was giving her room to make things right. In reality, I was avoiding the inevitable next conversation, the one where decisions would have to be made, where the comfortable fiction of our marriage might finally collapse. Mar tried to pull me out of my self-imposed exile, practically dragging me to a basketball game one night. "You look like hell," he said bluntly as we found our seats. "Thanks for the update. Have you talked to her?" I stared at the court, not really seeing it. "What's there to talk about? She's found someone else." Mark sighed. "So that's it. 5 years down the drain because you won't even fight for your marriage." His words hit harder than expected. Was I giving up too easily? Or was I just being realistic? "Sometimes fighting isn't the answer," I said finally. "Sometimes you need to recognize when you've already lost." The conversation died there, but Mark's words haunted me. What kind of man walks away without a fight? Was I a coward for avoiding confrontation? Or was I preserving what little dignity I had left? The answer came unexpectedly during a late-night video call with Lee. I was in Phoenix, 3 days into a week-long trip. She looked distracted, checking her watch repeatedly. "Am I keeping you from something?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "No, just, I have plans later." "With Angie?" She met my eyes through the screen, defiant. "Yes, actually." The confirmation shouldn't have hurt. I already knew, but it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. "Does she make you happy?" The question surprised us both. Lee hesitated, then nodded slowly. "She sees me, Francis. She's present in ways you haven't been for years. I've been building our future, while missing our present." The simplicity of her statement left me speechless. She wasn't wrong. I'd sacrificed our day-to-day happiness for some nebulous future security. I deserved to be someone's priority, not their afterthought, she continued quietly. In that moment, something inside me hardened. Not with anger, but with clarity. I'd given everything to our future, compromising our present. But Lee had made her choice, and now I needed to make mine. "You're right," I said finally. "You do deserve that." She looked surprised, as if she'd expected a fight. But I was done fighting for someone who didn't want to be fought for. "I'll be home Friday," I said. "We can talk then." We both knew what that conversation would entail. I didn't go home Friday as planned. Instead, I extended my Phoenix trip over the weekend, using a client emergency as an excuse. The truth was, I needed time to think, to plan. Once I confronted Lee, there would be no going back. My hotel room became command central as I took inventory of our life together. Joint accounts, shared assets, intertwined finances. We'd built everything as a team. Now I needed to protect myself without looking like I was preparing for war. I called Jake, my company's VP, and requested a confidential meeting. "I'm dealing with some personal issues," I explained vaguely. "Might need to restructure my schedule for a while." Jake's voice softened with understanding. "Anything I can help with? Just need a home base for a bit. Somewhere not home. The Minneapolis office has been asking for executive support. I could station you there temporarily." Minneapolis. Far enough away to make a clean break if needed. I accepted the offer gratefully. Next, I called our financial advisor, establishing separate accounts without removing funds from our joint holdings. Not taking anything, just creating options. I wasn't going to be the bad guy in this scenario, even if I was the only one who'd know it. The hardest call was to Mark. "I need a favor," I said when he answered. "A place to crash when I get back." His response was immediate. "Guest room's yours as long as you need it. No questions, no judgment." That's what real friendship looks like. By Sunday night, I felt as prepared as I could be. I booked a flight home for Monday morning, steeling myself for what would come. Lee texted as I was packing. "What time will you be home tomorrow?" "Around noon," I replied, keeping it professional. "Can we talk when you get here?" The 3 dots indicating she was typing more appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. "I've made some decisions," she finally added. Funny. So had I. My phone rang, Lee. Unusual for her to call rather than text. I hesitated before answering. "Francis." Her voice sounded different. Resolute. "I need to tell you something before you come home." "I'm listening." My heart hammered despite my outward calm. "Angie and I, it's serious. I've been trying to find the right time to tell you, but there's never a right time for this conversation." I closed my eyes, letting the confirmation wash over me. Hearing it spoken aloud was different from seeing messages or suspecting. "How long?" I managed to ask. 6 months. Maybe longer if I'm honest about when feelings started. 6 months. Half a year of deception while I traveled the country building what I thought was our future. Were you ever going to tell me if I hadn't seen those messages? A pause. Eventually. I didn't want to hurt you. I laughed. A short, bitter sound. Considerate of you. Francis. Save it for tomorrow. I interrupted. We'll talk when I get home. I hung up, my decision crystallizing. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no pleading or accusations. That wasn't who I was. Strategic withdrawal was sometimes the strongest move a man could make. I finished packing methodically, leaving out only what I'd need in the morning. Then I called the airline and changed my flight, not to home, but to Minneapolis. Sometimes the most powerful response isn't showing up for the battle at all. Minneapolis greeted me with a snowstorm and sub-zero temperatures, fitting weather for my emotional state. The company had arranged a corporate apartment downtown, sparsely furnished but functional. I arrived Monday afternoon, instead of going home as Lee expected. I'd texted her from the airport. Plans changed. Won't be home today after all. Her response was immediate. What? We need to talk. Francis, when will you be back? I didn't answer. Let her feel the uncertainty I'd been living with. Let her wonder, for once, where I was and what I was doing. She called repeatedly that evening. I silenced my phone, watching it vibrate across the hotel nightstand. 15 missed calls. 27 text messages, ranging from confused to angry to concerned. Are you seriously ghosting me right now? This is childish, Francis. At least tell me you're safe. The last one nearly broke my resolve. I typed a brief reply. I'm safe. Need time to think. We'll contact you when I'm ready. Then I turned off my phone completely. The Minneapolis office welcomed me without questions. Jake had briefed the team that I was dealing with personal matters, and they respected my privacy. I threw myself into work with single-minded focus, taking on projects that required my full attention, leaving no room for dwelling on my collapsing marriage. 3 days passed in a blur of meetings and late nights. I stayed at the office until security started their rounds, then returned to my sterile apartment to fall into dreamless exhaustion. On the 4th day, I turned my phone back on. 68 missed calls. Voicemails from Lee, from her mother, even from Angie. Text messages that evolved from anger to panic to resignation. The most recent, sent that morning. I filed a police report yesterday. They said adults have the right to disappear if they want to. Is that what you're doing, Francis? Disappearing? At least let me know you're alive. I call Mark first. He answered on the first ring. Jesus, Francis, where the hell are you? Minneapolis. New assignment. Your wife thinks you're dead in a ditch somewhere. She's not worried about me, I said flatly. She's worried about how this looks. Mark's sigh carried the weight of friendship and frustration. She came by looking for you. Crying. Call hospitals. The whole 9 yards. Something twisted in my chest. Guilt. Or just the last embers of love dying out. Did you tell her anything? No. Not my place. He paused. What's your plan here, Francis? Strategic retreat. I needed space to think clearly. And are you? Thinking clearly. I looked around the empty apartment, at the takeout containers and unwashed clothes. Clarity wasn't exactly what I found here. I'm getting there. I lied. Well, while you're getting there, your mother-in-law is organizing a search party, and Lee is blowing up everyone's phone. You need to at least tell her you're alive. He was right. Disappearing completely wouldn't solve anything. It might feel satisfying in the moment, but it was ultimately cowardly. I sent Lee a brief email. I'm safe. Working in Minneapolis for a while. We'll contact you about next steps soon. Impersonal. Formal. The kind of message you'd send to an acquaintance, not a wife of 5 years. But it was all I could manage without crumbling. A week passed in Minneapolis. Winter settled in around me, a blanket of isolation that matched my internal landscape. I established routines. Early mornings at the hotel gym, long days at the office, takeout dinners eaten while reviewing contracts. No time for introspection. No space for grief. Lee's attempts to contact me grew less frequent, as if she'd accepted my absence. Mark kept me updated. She's telling people you had a breakdown, he reported during one of our calls. That the pressure got to you, and you just snapped. I laughed humorlessly. Convenient narrative. She moved some of her things out yesterday. Angie was helping her. The image stung more than expected. Lee and her lover packing up our shared life while I hid 1,000 miles away. But it also solidified my resolve. There was no going back now. I finally called Lee on day 9. Francis. Her voice was guarded, uncertain. We need to talk about next steps, I said, keeping my tone businesslike. Next steps, she repeated flatly. That's all you have to say after disappearing for over a week. What would you prefer? That I rage at you? Beg you to reconsider? I kept my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. I think we're past that point. I was worried sick about you. Were you? Or were you worried about what people would think when they found out your husband left after discovering your affair? Silence stretched between us. Then a soft exhale. I never meant for this to happen, Francis. And yet you made choices every day that led us here. More silence. I could almost see her. Phone pressed to her ear. That conflicted expression she wore when confronted with uncomfortable truths. I've retained an attorney, I finally said. He'll be contacting you about divorce proceedings. The word hung between us. Divorce. The formal dissolution of 5 years of marriage, of promises and shared dreams. That's it then. Her voice cracked slightly. You're not even willing to try. Try what exactly? To pretend I don't know about Angie. To ignore that you've been living a double life for months. To understand why it happened. To acknowledge your part in this. My grip tightened on the phone. My part was working myself to exhaustion to build the future we planned together. Your part was betraying every vow we made. You weren't there, Francis, she exploded. You were never there. You can't build a marriage with someone who's always gone. The truth in her words hit like a physical blow. I had been absent, had prioritized work over presence, created the void she filled with someone else. But understanding didn't equal absolution. You're right, I conceded, surprising us both. I wasn't there enough. That's on me. She let out a shaky breath. Francis, but you had choices, Lee. You could have demanded more time, insisted we go to counseling, given me an ultimatum. Instead, you chose deception. The line went quiet again. When she spoke, her voice was resigned. So this is how it ends. Not with a fight, but with you running away to another state. I didn't run away. I corrected. I removed myself from a situation where clear thinking was impossible. And now I've made my decision. Which is, the papers will be delivered next week. I'm keeping the Minneapolis position permanently. She laughed bitterly. Of course you are. Work is all you've ever really loved anyway. The call ended without goodbyes. I stared at the phone, feeling strangely hollow. Not devastated, not even angry anymore. Just empty. Outside my window, snow continued to fall, covering Minneapolis in a fresh, blank layer of white. 3 months passed in Minneapolis. Winter gave way to spring, though you wouldn't know it from the lingering snow and biting winds. The divorce proceedings moved forward with surprising efficiency. Lee didn't contest anything once I made it clear I wouldn't fight for alimony or asset division beyond what was fair. She just wants it over with, my attorney explained. Angie's moved in completely now. The knowledge should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I felt only a dull ache like pressing on a bruise that's mostly healed. My life developed new contours. The Minneapolis team had welcomed me fully, inviting me to weekend activities, introducing me to the city beyond my corporate apartment. I joined a kickboxing gym, channeling residual anger into physical exertion. I started sleeping through the night again. Mark visited in April, ostensibly for business, but really to check on me. You look better, he observed over dinner at a steakhouse downtown. Less like a zombie. Feel better too, I admitted. Turns out running away was exactly what I needed. He nodded thoughtfully. Not running away. Strategic relocation. I smiled at his reframing. How are things back home? Gossips died down. Lee's reputation took a hit when people found out about Angie. Your mother-in-law still tells anyone who'll listen that you had a mental breakdown. I laughed. Let her. I know the truth. The house sold, he added cautiously. Over asking price. The last physical tie to my marriage gone. I'd let Lee handle the sale, wanting nothing to do with the space we'd once shared. Good, I said and meant it. You're really not coming back, are you? I considered the question carefully. Minneapolis wasn't home yet, but it held possibilities that my old life didn't. Maybe someday. For a visit. Not to stay. Mark studied me. You know what impressed me most? You never badmouthed her. Not once. Most guys would have trashed Lee to anyone who'd listen. What would that accomplish? I shrugged. We both made mistakes. Hers were more dramatic, but mine laid the groundwork. That's surprisingly mature. Turns out losing everything forces some perspective. You didn't lose everything, Mark countered. You lost a wife who didn't deserve you. You still got your career, your dignity, friends who care about you. He was right. The end of my marriage hadn't been the end of me, just the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. 1 year after leaving home, I stood in my new Minneapolis condo, surrounded by boxes yet to be unpacked. The divorce had been finalized months ago. A few signatures, a judge's approval, and 5 years of marriage reduced to legal documents and division of assets. My phone buzzed with a text from Sandra, a marketing executive I'd been seeing for a few weeks. Still on for dinner tonight? I can help unpack after. I smiled, typing a quick affirmative. We'd met at a company event, connected over our mutual love of obscure jazz and hiking trails. Nothing serious yet, just enjoyable company as I navigated this new chapter. The doorbell rang. Mark, in town again for business, and carrying housewarming whiskey. Look at you, a proper Minneapolis homeowner, he said, surveying the space. If anyone had told me a year ago this is where you'd end up, I'd have called them crazy. I finished, pouring us each a drink. Funny how life works out. We settled on the couch, the only furniture properly arranged in the living room. Heard from Lee, he asked cautiously. Christmas card, believe it or not. She and Angie bought a place in Portland. You okay with that? I consider the question. I am actually. I hope they're happy. Mark studied me. You really mean that? I do. What happened between us was complicated. We both made mistakes. I sipped my whiskey. But I needed to lose that life to find this one. And how's this one treating you? I gestured around the sunlit condo. Promotion last month. New place. Might even get a dog. And Sandra. Taking it slow. But she's good company. Mark nodded approvingly. You know what this is, right? Growth. I laughed at his earnestness. Very profound. Laugh all you want. But look how far you've come. A year ago you were shell-shocked, hiding out in a corporate apartment. Now you're building something new. He wasn't wrong. The pain hadn't disappeared completely. Occasionally I'd see something that reminded me of Lee, feel a momentary pang of what might have been. But those moments were increasingly rare, replaced by anticipation for what lay ahead. After Mark left, I unpacked my home office, setting up the space where I'd work remotely 3 days a week. A new company policy I'd helped implement, encouraging work-life balance. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed again, Sandra sending a restaurant suggestion. As I confirmed our plans, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked different than the man who'd fled here a year ago. Steadier, more present. The greatest lesson from my failed marriage wasn't about betrayal or heartbreak. It was simpler and more profound. Life doesn't end when relationships do. It transforms. And if you're brave enough to embrace the change rather than fight it, you might just find yourself exactly where you need to be. Not running away from something, but moving towards something better.
Bye.